This is AVWeek, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. We're doing it a little bit different this week, a little bit early, mainly because the two gentlemen that we have on as our panelists are not in the States. They're not in the Central Time Zone, or Pacific, or the Eastern. They are in Germany and UK, respectively. First up, my buddy, my pal, the guy I've been trying to hire for over a year, Mr. Patrick Murray. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Tim. How are you today?
Patrick is a fabulous programmer for Control House Systems Design. Also, you may have recognized his lovely face from Infocom this year and the AVWeek at the Innovation Showcase. So, you doing good?
Hanging in there, getting ready to launch AVWeek, working real hard at it. So,
we're going to talk about that here in a second. So,
okay.
Also with us from Lucid Partnership is Adrian Lloyd Owen. Hello, sir.
Good afternoon, Tim. Thank you for inviting me along today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you guys for joining us. So this is what we're going to do. This is just still AVWeek. We're still going to go over the news and information, but we're going to get it from a little bit different perspective, as it were. One thing that I learned at ISC this year, we went to ISC for the first time, was just it's still AV, right? You still have connectors, you still have issues, you still have programmers. But it's a different environment, it's a different culture, and so I just kind of wanted to do something different for this week. So, all right, first up, what we've got is from all over actually. This specific story comes to us from Engadget. Toshiba CEO is quitting after the company lied about $1.2 billion in profits. $1.2 billion in profits. So, Patrick, first and foremost, when it comes to the culture of Japan and the fact that this has been a bigger cultural issue and a bigger cultural story in Japan than it has been anything. But for AV and for the fact that you have a company like Toshiba who's been around forever and a day, losing money hand over fist to the tune of over $1 billion, what does that mean for their future and for their place in the industry?
Well, obviously they're going to clean house, and there'll be some new people involved, so I don't know what it means for the future. It's pretty scary that they could get away with it for that long. They're obviously under a lot of pressures as far as currency and things like that go. They were the early adopters of this corporate government reform, and didn't exactly work out as intended, so we'll see how it works out for them.
All right, Adrian, from your perspective, what does it mean for kind of the future of Toshiba? Patrick's right; they got away with something for a long time that they probably shouldn't have. So, what does it mean for them?
It staggers me that any corporate can get away with that kind of bad housekeeping, but it does happen. What's going to be difficult for them, like any other company now, is finding an innovative way back, because it's one thing to have reducing profits, but when you've made a significant loss, that's a huge thing to pull back, and it can take 3 or 4 times as long to get rid of that loss before you're back into profit again. How's anybody going to have any confidence in them? It's not going to make anybody in the AV industry confident about buying products for them if there's the potential risk that the support's going to disappear. People want long-term maintenance contracts and long-term product safety these days. It's a key part of corporate buying and procurement plans. So, if there's a risk that the company's not going to be around in 3 years' time to support a key product, let's not buy it. Let's buy somebody else's that we know has got a more stable economy.
And that creates an interesting little an interesting conundrum, because you're right. As people, as they start losing confidence, they're going to stop buying, which would increase their losses. Almost,
it just gets worse from here. I'm don't want to be the harbinger of doom, but it's all looking pretty bleak, and they could well be going down the tube, or they may decide to just focus on a sector that's less concerned about corporate identity. If they concentrate on the more consumer electronic side, perhaps where it's going to individuals rather than to larger reintegrators, that might be a safer bet for them.
It's also a little bit more risky bet because those margins are traditionally a lot thinner. All right, let's jump around here for a couple minutes. First of all, BIAMP and Infocom has gotten together for an AV IT educational series. Basically, when you look at these are all of the different Infocoms around the world. You've got one in Mumbai, You've got one in Chile, not in Chile, but Chile, there's not an Infocom in Chile, but you've got one in Brazil. You've got another one in China. Adrian, from your standpoint, what exactly do we need to know at this point when it comes to AV and IT, and AV living on an IT infrastructure?
Oh, it's a regular daily conversation for our team. We do an awful lot of corporate work, and I don't mean that to exclude the residential market, but
Yeah.
the challenge is specifically around security. And I was giggling yesterday about the issue with the carjacking. But to come back to this, the AV-IT integration is creating the requirement for lots more knowledge, for lots more understanding of what's going on, and you have to be able to have detailed conversations with very risk-adverse IT managers and department security officers who want to know everything about the stuff you're connecting. And we're going through a process for one client now where we're having to have everything vetted. All the products have got to be certified as okay to go on their network, and some of these things they've never seen before. And it creates a conversation that ideally most programmers are able to adopt, but I'm not sure that necessarily salespeople or project managers have the wherewithal to answer those questions. So it makes our programming life easier when we can get onto a single network, but at the same time it creates huge challenges for what responsibilities you're taking on in terms of security. Even just getting your own laptop onto a site so that you can plug into a network, that's not an easy path anymore.
No. Take me through that process of getting that stuff vetted, especially if they've never seen it before. What does it look like?
Yeah, in the first instance, they're going to want the basic corporate details and what security credentials does the product come with. Can it deal with authentication? Can it deal with encryption? Can it access their Active Directory network? Those kind of simple specification details, and you can get that information quickly enough. Then they're going to want to know in detail what kind of communication protocols you're going to use, port numbers, protocol types. What systems does it need to interface with? Is it going outside of the building, outside of the campus, or is it just going to talk locally? Once they've established what the likely and allowable communication protocols are, then they're going to do a penetration test on it, and they're going to throw everything they can at it to see if there's any way to get inside that box through a port that you didn't mention, a port they don't like the idea of. And once they've done that, then going to decide if they can launch something from it. Can they run an executable on that box without permission? Those kind of things. It's a detailed process. They have time to do it. We recently scared the guys at one corporate though, when we said, well, there's about 50 new products here that you've never seen before, and you're going to have to penetration test all of these in the next 2 months, and it's a big ask for them.
Oh wow, absolutely. But it's also important too. I mean, that's a little bit more robust than what I'm used to hearing about. But that's actually something that we can take away and maybe start implementing. Thank you. All right, Mr. Patrick, what do we need to know from a IT and AV standpoint at this point?
Well, I'm all for education, so as much as you could learn, the better. But I'm always looking at why would our system need to be on a corporate LAN. And the big driver that I see right now is things like Fusion and Room View. So if you want to monitor it from their LAN, then it obviously needs to be on their system. So, but if you could isolate it, that removes a lot of friction as far as troubleshooting and getting the system up and running and managing your own LAN.
What are the benefits and maybe the drawbacks as well of doing it on their LAN exclusively, or maybe creating a separate VLAN and then making a connection between the two of those?
VLANing is an important way to get that segregation and to provide you with some level of security. But if you're going to have to intercommunicate, let's suppose, you mentioned BIAP there, so AV controlling DSP systems, and the DSP may be using an audio distribution system that's over IP. If that's the case, then there's a requirement to have those two things to talk to each other, and in doing so, then you're opening up pinholes in the VLANs, and then you might be getting an awful lot of traffic. At which point, you can get to a situation where the VLANs become almost obsolete because you've created so many pathways through the two VLANs that you might as well have stuck your device on the secure network. But DSP, particularly things like QSYS and I suppose BIAMP to some degree, and others, and Polycom. And Link is another one, then talking to Link systems and having those communication paths. So Patrick's right. If you can isolate, that's a good thing, and keep your own little domain, and nobody's on your back about what you're doing. But with the integration levels that they want now, I'm finding it increasingly difficult to stay isolationist.
That makes sense. Patrick, from your standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. It is becoming more difficult, and that's just something you need to take into account when you're planning a project, how you're going to get it installed on site and tested, and what kind of support you need. Like, will the IT guy be there to help you out if things aren't working properly? On more than one occasion, we've built our own little network just to prove that things work properly, and then you plug things back into their switch, and things aren't communicating. So it's definitely a challenge, and it needs to be planned for.
That's always a wonderful conversation
Yeah.
to have. This works on my own private network. When I plug it into yours, it stops working.
Yeah.
Explain that to me, please. All right, from our buddies over at AV Magazine, we met these guys at Infocom this year. Great guys. AVNew launches Bright Sign built-in digital displays. Now, I know you guys don't inherently do digital signage. That's not why I'm not sandbagging you, but this is freaking cool, and this is where I want to go with this. It's two companies that are kind of integrating in together. And Patrick, not only do you program, but you do have the AVGUI. And when are you launching that, by the way?
Middle to end of August.
Okay, so AVGUI is a great little app that runs on a mobile device. You can program or configure. Good Lord. Well, you had AMX and Crestron. You were showing the all-in-one boxes. Yeah. So if you collaborated with Crestron or AMX, either one, and kind of got together, this is kind of what this is. When it comes to getting two companies together, though, Patrick, how do we make sure that not only they are taken care of, but they start creating products that we want? I mean, this is cool to me, right? You've got two companies that get it. That makes a whole lot of sense. But they did it right and everything like that. But when it comes to, let's say, I don't know, I don't want to put ideas in corporate's head, but when it comes to two other companies, how maybe it comes down to talking with their engineers. But how do we make sure that stuff like this continues to happen and companies continue to work together?
Just listen to your customers, do some market research. Trade shows are great, and just keep talking and listen to what kind of problems people are having and what kind of solutions are needed. I really think it's great when two different companies come together and work with their strengths to come up with a solution that the market really needs.
Adrian, from your standpoint, is that the deal where you just make sure that you're listening to your clients, you're listening to your customers, not just the integrators, but also the actual end users?
I think end users are more likely to be the drivers of this kind of collaboration, because the larger companies need necessarily to find new and innovative products, and that can often mean coming up with things that people hadn't thought of. So they go away, they listen, see what people are saying. Well, I don't like this, I don't like that. So how can we come up with something new? I mean, there's two. I don't want to go into advertising for anybody, but there's two large products that have come out in the last 3 years. One for just doing conference calling with all-in-one box kind of thing, and we've all seen those taking place, and that involved a huge amount of partnership between. Initially, there was, I think, 3 vendors that were reselling the Link idea, and then now the Surface and the Hub thing, and you see there's some collaboration there with some different partners. I understand that they were announcing last week that Microsoft's going to be doing some collaboration with AMX and bringing in their side. And those kind of collaborations, I think, are the way forward, where, like the monitor and the software here, you're bringing things that otherwise were always seen as disconnected and something that the integrator had to do. Getting those products integrated at a manufacturer level gives people gives me some more confidence that any glitches are going to be ironed out quickly. You're going to get to the top of the queue of bugs because it's a corporate level agreement, a partnership, not just something that somebody's tried to do. Custom electronics always suffers from the possibility that great people with good ideas are trying to come up with new solutions, but we don't get the backing generally of the manufacturers when we try and do something they didn't think of. Oh, we never thought the box would be used like that. That's not going to work. And you're left on your own, and that's fine if you're enjoying the challenge of making those new concepts work. But getting something that's well thought through and is supported all the way through the technology support path of two corporates has got to be a way forward. I think we'll see much more of it.
You mentioned the Surface Hub, and I want to kind of drill down on that for a second. Does it take away from collaboration like that because you've got a company like Microsoft, who at Infocom this year, Crestron made some hay about the fact that they had this integrated system and this integrated partnership with Microsoft, and they were showing it at their booth at Infocom. And now Microsoft comes out and says, hey, we're also doing this with AMX. Does that prevent maybe some partnerships from happening, saying, hey, wait a minute, no, what you're partnering with my competition here, what's the deal here? Or is it just, let's get innovation moving forward?
I think it's really about getting innovation moving forward, and I think that's very positive because there are different strategies and different expectations from those kind of competitors. It's necessary to have that original ideas coming through. So no, I think that's really positive. I don't think innovation should be concerned about those two people talking to the same lead company. They're all members of the HD-based Alliance. It's the same kind of conversation, really.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Patrick, from your standpoint, I mean, you've got both AMX and Crestron for AVWeek, and you program both. So is it okay, I guess, the best way to ask this, to talk to competing companies?
Sure, why not? I mean, the need is there to control these things, and like we're seeing with the AV and the digital signage, that things are becoming more integrated as a product. So as a lead manufacturer, I guess Microsoft would want to integrate with as many manufacturers as they could. So any kind of partnership like that where it just strengthens the product, bringing these things together.
All right, very good. All right, we're going to head over and stop talking about products for a second and get a little bit more, I guess, 50,000-foot view. Our buddy Dan Newman wrote a piece in Commercial Integrator, Why Small Business Should Look to the Cloud. A growing number of small businesses are investing in cloud computing, but many are still hesitant. Here's how to turn the tide and quell any fear of the cloud. Patrick, I am obviously going to start with you on this one because not only are you a programmer, but the AVGUI is a cloud-based solution because you can save your presets and you can save your configuration to the website eventually once you have it loaded up. What are the drawbacks, I guess, or what are some of the fears that smaller companies may have when it comes to putting things on somebody else's server in the cloud?
Well, I'm a bit paranoid myself, so I like to make a backup anyway. And even with the AVGUI stuff, we'll be pulling that down like every day or every week and making an offsite backup of it. So I think a little bit of paranoia is okay because if something happens, where's my stuff? That's the big fear. So if you make a hard backup, but there's a lot of convenience and efficiency to be able to distribute data between teams or to your customers by using the cloud. It's just there when you need it, which is a really cool thing. And I think the development opportunities are really amazing because the same tools that Microsoft and Amazon and all these big companies use, anybody could use them, and it doesn't cost anything to test with it. And once it starts costing money, that means you're doing a lot of cloud stuff, and you should have some kind of product that's turning a profit. So it's really incredible the opportunity that's out there to start developing with cloud services.
Yeah, absolutely. Adrian, from your standpoint, what are some of the drawbacks and/or the benefits of using cloud computing?
I've seen mostly benefits over the 10 years or so that I've been working as an independent programmer, having the ability to easily share live code and completed code with clients and with collaborators. You used to struggle. There was a time when we were concerned about how many whether we could fit all of our code onto a disk and send it to somebody. I'm showing my age now, but the ability to collaborate online and share things with a distributed team. You've been working with Patrick, I know, a lot, and Patrick's some miles away from you. The ability for you guys to collaborate must be extremely useful. Similarly, we have a team that's distributed all over the UK in 4 locations, and you've got guys on site, and you know, collaborating live online is quite practical now. You can desktop share, or you can send up some files to the cloud and get them back down. I think it's also, from a business point of view, applications like drawing applications, documents, presentations, even accounting stuff. We use a huge amount of online software, and it's much more portable from our perspective. It's more cross-platform friendly, and it also it is cheaper to use. You know, you can buy online software much cheaper than you can buy off-the-shelf software.
Well, let's be honest here. I mean, we're using Google Hangouts, which is a cloud-based solution, right? It's a cloud-based VTC solution. Let's be honest, and it's free, and it records to YouTube, and it's all kinds of wonderful stuff. So
there you go. The article said that a lot of people don't know that they're using the cloud when they're using it. I think that's a perfect implementation. That's a great design when you're using something and you don't even know about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah. Was a Microsoft 360. You can start, you can utilize different Microsoft Office products now, and it's all cloud-based. You can have a local copy of it, but you're going to have, the ability to share and collaborate. It's a wonderful, wonderful product. So, all right, let's get over to Infocom. Infocom is getting ready to do their 2015 AV vertical market study. The global end user perspective, who's buying the goods and services across the globe, what are the purchase decision criteria for end users, and how has convergence impacted end user investments in technology. Adrian, from the UK and from the areas that you cover, first question is the last one we asked. From a global perspective, how has convergence between IT and AV impacted who's making those decisions and what sort of decisions they're making?
There's a definite change in who wants to make the decisions. So even if you take questions about Link or Surface, there are now IT people who are seeing the AV budget as something that they can leverage, and they're going, okay, now this is an IP product, it's primarily an IP product, so we're going to want to have a conversation with the manufacturers. I know there's a large number of IT specialists who are now coming over to ISE regularly because they see that as something that they can leverage to increase their skill set, or maybe just to increase their, I suppose, strengthen their foothold in the departments. IT people have historically had the biggest budgets for all the infrastructure equipment, and I think they're going to drive a lot of the purchasing now. So decisions are more leveraged by the IT people, or more than they used to be in the past anyway.
Patrick, from your guys' standpoint, who's making these decisions now, and what are they making them about?
Well, the IT guys are definitely getting more involved for obvious reasons. Things like Link definitely falls under their domain, but even the monitoring systems, it's like RoomView and Fusion, those are tools that they're kind of familiar with, and they'll be the ones who are working with them after the fact. So they really are even more interested in how the systems work because of that. Once you show this to them and it's going to run on a server and they understand that, and then they see the interface, it looks like a database because it is, and it's something that they're familiar with, which generates some interest, and it kind of opens the door to the conversation with the IT guys.
Well, it actually kind of goes back to the cloud conversation we just had. I mean, both AMX has had their cloud RMS for a while, and now Crestron is getting into the same thing with Fusion in the cloud. So, they all kind of part and parcel of the whole thing. So,
I've seen
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I've seen a couple of inquiries from large data support companies who want to bring the AV monitoring under what is already an IT monitoring service that they have, and I've had a couple of conversations with people about trying to bridge that gap. They see the AV support as a way of extending their market sector.
Oh wow, okay, that makes sense. Our buddy Steve Greenblatt, who hosts A State of Control, has written a piece in or on avnetwork.com. Let's see if I can bring it up here. Talking about technicians needing updating. He says that as our industry has transitioned into the era of digital video, network communications, and IP control, the skill set needed to test, troubleshoot, and commission AV systems successfully has evolved. So, Adrian, how do you keep your team up to date? I mean, we have moved from, for years and years and years, it was for ADI video for from 19 from the early days of television all the way up through the end of the 90s, and then suddenly it's like, holy cow, you have 1080p, 720, and then you have 1080i and 1080p, and now we've got 4K and the various flavors of 4K. So how do we keep them updated?
Yeah, it's not easy. Interestingly, in the time that I've been running Lucid, we've looked at strategies for recruitment and trying to take people from a predominantly programming or an IT background and bring them into the AV environment. And we've tried also bringing people from a more traditional engineering AV installer background who have a desire to get into programming, heaven knows why, and bring them some programming training. I've actually found it much more successful to take people with an AV understanding and teach them programming than the other way around. And I think that's still true now with the need to understand more about IT and digital communications. You've got to keep up regular training. There's no other way around it. But you can't be sure what information you're going to need. A comment I made earlier about being challenged by IT department managers about the protocols you're using or the communications you want to have and the security features. These are detailed understanding, or these conversations need detailed understanding, and it's not readily available. Masters level programmers get a good review this year. Crestron's Masters 2015 had some good information about security and what's available, but these things don't necessarily translate internationally either. I've suggested to some people that Crestron have got some great security declarations and certificates in the US, and they weren't quite so keen to take that at face value. They wanted to do their own research, as I say. So training, manufacturers, maybe they can provide more training, but it always tends to be a little bit specific about their product. I think Infocom can provide training tools for IT professionals, AV professionals, to understand where the crossover is, and I think that's something that Infocom has been doing well for a long time. But I think we need to change the syllabus on some of the more traditional courses and help people along. It is all just about regular training.
You mentioned the fact that some of those security did not translate well from the U.S. to the UK. Why is that?
Specifically because there are different standards in place. I mean, nobody knocked a hole in it or anything, but to say that a product had a US military certification didn't necessarily mean it was going to meet a European bank's security verification methods. They had their own standards to adhere to, so they couldn't just take it at face value. It was a good starting point.
I'm wondering though, is if somebody like I don't know, IEEE or somebody like that could come up with one that we could all kind of agree on, because you do have multinational corporations that, not just Crestron, but you've got Cisco and you've got other corporations that make products that they ship throughout the world, and knowing things like that would, I think, be helpful. And I don't know if it's Infocom, I don't know who it is, but having us all kind of come together and say, what, Barclays has this level of security, Bank of America has this,
I mean, those companies, for example, those transatlantic companies are good examples where they clearly have to deal in different conversations, and they must have a standard set of rules, and maybe you're right, those more disconnected, more independent bodies would be better suited to provide the level of certification and guarantees that people are looking for.
Yeah. All right, Patrick. How do you keep your guys trained and updated on what's going on in the world of AV?
Like Adrian was saying, as a programmer, you don't stand a chance unless you know about IT. So it's just constant, yeah, reading, always trying to keep up on the latest thing. And every once in a while, you bump up against something that you don't know that you should, and that's the opportunity to learn about it. So the article was talking about technicians, and I started about as a technician. So, and I was always curious about this stuff, and it seems kind of odd to me that an AV tech isn't curious about how this stuff works. But maybe two different job descriptions are needed. Like yesterday on A State of Control, Steve was talking about a field engineer. So maybe you have a field engineer and an installer, and maybe in some cases it'll be the same person. But there needs to be that training and the incentive and the tools. Do you have a laptop? Right?
Okay. Let's take a step, because Patrick's right, and thank you for mentioning that. We talked about testing and troubleshooting when it comes to control systems on a state of control, and that should be up today or tomorrow. Who is that? Right? I mean, that whole show kind of came about from a conversation Steve and I were having, because I'm an independent programmer. You guys are independent programmers. This almost could be a state of control, oddly enough. We run into it, right, at that, where you as the independent programmer, just because it says AMX on the box, that's suddenly, our bailiwick, right? Regardless of whether it's a digital signage player or an ANOVA or an actual controller. But when we got into this conversation, Patrick, what is it? What is it that the programmer should be doing, and what is it that maybe a technician or field tech or who, whatever you want to call that person, that what is it that they should be doing? I mean, you mentioned the laptop. 10 years ago, you didn't have to have a laptop to do a lot of what folks do now. I think Bernard mentioned it on the show. Even with DSPs, right, with audio control. 15 years ago, you had freaking knobs, and now there are no knobs. You look at a DSP, it's a beautiful blank plate. Nothing. You're doing nothing in that box without a laptop, right? But is that the programmer's problem, or is that the problem? But is that their job responsibility, or is that a technician's?
To me, that falls under project management. So you get a job, and what are the steps to completion?
Supposed to do that?
No, he's not supposed to do it, but he's got to make a list of all the tasks, right? So what are the tasks? How do we get to completion? And then who's going to do it? And that needs to be communicated. If you're subbing out the GUI design or the programming, then that's on your task list too. Is there DSP programming? Who's going to update the firmware and set IP addresses? It's pretty easy to make a list and just assign those tasks to whoever's going to do it, but it needs to be thought about and planned for on a case-by-case basis. Some companies don't have the talent or the resources to do those things, and other companies do. Other companies have great techs who could do everything, and the programmer just shows up and tests his code. So you just need to account for these different situations and plan for it.
All right, Adrian, from your company, who is supposed to be doing what?
Like Patrick, I like to have a good conversation with the project manager and decide, divvy up the responsibilities early on. One of the things I've seen over the last maybe 2 to 3 years significantly is that AV integrators are struggling to find people with the right skill sets to fill those holes where there's a guy who can configure audio and he's a great pair of ears and he can get all the wiring right, but he's maybe not so hot on the DSP side, so he needs some training. But which training course do they send him on? Does he go on the product A, product B, product C? And that's a lot of time out of their schedule. So what I think is filling the hole here in the UK, particularly, or at least in London, is independent DSP and control system programmers who are taking the responsibility on themselves to go to several manufacturers, get trained up, and then they can offer greater services to their, in the same way that independent programmers do, whether they're Crestron, AMX, Extron, whatever. It's the independents who are filling the techno or the skill set gap mostly at the moment. One of the other things that I've seen as an issue is, you rightly say, so few boxes now arrive with any control that doesn't require a laptop. And you go to the latter stages of any new building commissioning now, the heating guy's got a laptop, the lighting guy's got a laptop, the guy doing the security access entry system, he's got a laptop, and they're all standing around with laptops in their hand or looking for somewhere to purchase. And these are all computer operators. These roles are not site technician roles anymore as they were traditionally. They're all computer operator roles, and I have a concern that it's being overlooked by the project managers of sites, and they're saying, well, you can't have an office until we've finished building the place, so you're just going to have to carry a laptop. Well, that's not appropriate. If you're doing that level of commissioning, you need a workbench. You need somewhere to work. Anyway, it's just a little bugbear of mine. We're all computer operators now. If we choose to accept it or not, the reality is there, and we have to bear that in mind when we go to site. It's a prerequisite.
Well, it is, and I actually didn't even think about it like that. But you're right. I mean, all of us. I mean, I'm trying to think of a trade, probably electrician, but even those, on some level, when you get to the level of putting in the electrical system, even those guys have laptops for different levels of stuff. So you're right. I know that I've programmed with my laptop on my literal lap before, so
it's not good
against the wall. Yeah, it's not good, but sit on the ground.
Cable spool,
something.
No.
All right, as we wrap up here, Adrian mentioned the Jeep hack. Hacked Jeep, who to blame? This is from the EE Times. Actually, one thing real quick. This actually happened in my hometown.
Really?
When they physically did this in St. Louis. So it was kind of neat. It was all over the local news, and obviously it went into other places.
You're saying they, Tim. I'm just assuming that.
They, quote unquote. It had nothing to do with this. I really didn't. I wouldn't have the foggiest idea. So this brings up a question of security, obviously, and the piece in the EE Times is talking about who is responsible for this level of security. If you're not familiar with it, read the piece. But basically, somebody put a cell phone in a Jeep and dialed it up and hacked into it and was able to control literally every part of the Jeep, including the steering and the acceleration, braking, as well as obviously the infotainment center. So. A little bit scary, a little bit interesting. Here's the problem, though, and you've got a level of security issue. Obviously, somebody breaks into your car and can take control of your car without you doing a darn thing. I want to bring this back to security of control systems, and I have been told by more than one control manufacturer person. We don't need to worry about security in AV because who wants to break into a control system, quote unquote, right? I have a slight problem with that because the more stuff that we are able to control, the more likely it's going to be that someone wants to break into it. Patrick, how do we make sure that our systems are safe and secure and locked down, and somebody can't come in and break in and access something that they shouldn't be through our devices?
Well, you start with the simple stuff and just passwords. Change the passwords. Don't leave any default passwords. Assign passwords. Don't use port forwarding. Set up a VPN if you need outside access. The simple things like that is a great way to start. Like with this Jeep problem, I see that as that's an integration issue. Somebody made a decision to connect systems having to do with safety with entertainment systems or with a system that had remote access. And that decision was made. And I think when you're making decisions like that, you need to weigh the risk. Because if there's a bridge between two different systems, then it is technically somehow possible to get through there. In the article, they said, not possible. We guarantee nobody could hack it. But somebody did. Thank goodness it was a white hat, right? So it can be acted on. Well, but if you're going to put that bridge in there, then the possibility is there too. So is it worth it? And the reasoning was that the manufacturer wanted to monitor the infotainment system. So is it worth it to possibly compromise systems having to do with safety in order to monitor an infotainment system? That's just a question that needs to be answered.
Well, and I was reading this article and watching the news reports from it, and I'm thinking, good Lord, this is like an episode of CSI waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's right there is, some disgruntled employee or disgruntled spouse hacks into their car and crashes it. And, Adrian, you've already kind of already talked about this, right? Where when you get together with the IT department of your clients and they just hammer the snot out of whatever product you're bringing in. Beyond that, how do you guys make sure that the stuff that we're putting on folks' network is secure and locked down?
Patrick's made the fundamental correct comment, which is that if you want something to be secure, don't connect it. So if it really matters, just don't connect it. Secondly, if there's a reason to get information out, that's not the same as getting information in. And I think that's the issue with the car here, is the firewall should have stopped inbound connections. Outbound data, yeah, fine, but there was no reason to have inbound. The same is true with the integrated systems that we work with. Only expose the connections that you need to. Make sure that things aren't communicating unnecessarily. VLANs are a good way to start, and even if that's just about reducing traffic load, but it's not something to be taken lightly. And I suppose residentially, people have got used to the idea of things like the thermostats, the Nest, and in the UK it's called Hive, or there's a version called Hive that's very popular, and people are doing that, and they have information going from the house to the cloud and then up from the mobile device to the cloud. Clients having access to their house remote control system on their mobile device has always bothered me, because it's too easy to lose that device and then you've given away access to your property, and that's very difficult to undo. As Patrick says, having a VPN connection is a good way to get a secure connection to a house. But we come back to this conversation previously, who's going to set up that network, who's going to be responsible for making sure it's a secure VPN connection and not something that's perhaps a little too weak. The responsibility lies with the integrator. Generally, they may not have the skill sets to do it. It's not something that I think any of us should take lightly, but it is something we are going to be challenged about. If somebody, let's suppose, was to make a connection from something that had a brand name on it that we were responsible for, and then managed to launch an attack onto something else, our industry would be in a really bad place. I wouldn't want to be taking a phone call like that. So I'm very keen to make sure everything we do is as squeaky clean as it can be, and that we're not leaving ourselves open to accusations of allowing a security breach.
Yeah, absolutely, that's a good place to leave it. Mr. Patrick Murray, thank you, sir, for joining us this week on AV Week. How can people get a hold of you or Control House?
Thank you, Tim. You could check me out at Twitter at Control House Info. That's Control HAUS Info. But more interesting for the listeners would probably be the app that's coming out in a few weeks. You could find out more at avgui.com or AVGUI app on Twitter.
Yay, AVGUI app. So this is Adrian Lloyd Owen. Thank you so much, sir, from Lucid Partnership. How can people get a hold of you?
Well, you can find us at our domain, lucidpartnership.co.uk, and there's contact details there. There's a Facebook link on there if you want to like us, and a Twitter link too. But you'll see me occasionally on Twitter, but I tend to keep that for more off the record comments. So probably not the best way to get hold of me.
Well, it would be good information and maybe entertaining. How about that?
Oh, okay. Well, you can find me at drtechno_UK.
There you go. All right. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me, because at this point, it's just counting down the days till football, American football. Although I do in case my son's getting more into football, so we're following that as well. So, but go by the website if you would please, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. Patrick mentioned the new episode of State of Control that'll be out this week as well. We have a new Live Life coming down the pipe, and also a new Pico projector show coming up as well. Great new blogs and bloggers. Our buddy Josh Shrego wrote a couple of new ones, so check those out if you would please. Also check out our underwriter page and thank our nice underwriters who are basically they're giving us money so we can do stuff like this, and we can go to shows like ISE and Infocom and bring you that coverage. So check that out if you would please too. All right, avnation.tv. avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been AV Week.